Hey guys, welcome. Today we're doing stocks, soups and sauces. We're going to be covering a lot in this unit. Today basically we're just looking at the fundamental brown stock. We're going to be looking at a demi glace and a jus. Okay, the recipes that you've got through either online or via your pack. There'll be some little changes today because you guys know me. I'm very industry aware. I'm looking at ways to give you tips and tricks for the real life scenario where we're out in the industry and we're learning ways to do things how chefs want us to do stuff. And I'm also going to be teaching you like classic ways. So the first thing we'll do is we're just going to look at our ingredients for a beef stock. It's pretty straightforward. We've got beef bones down here. So when we talk to our butchers about bones, and a lot of this actually we're going to cover more when it comes to the face-to-face online collaborative chats that we're going to be doing in the future. When we're doing things, I'll just talk to you roughly today, quickly about some of the key points. We're looking for nice bones, obviously good smell, they're not full of blood. We really want to be pretty tricky actually when it comes to the bones that we're talking to our butcher about, because we want a little bit of meat on them. We don't want them just straight bones with no meat. We want that lovely fleshy bone where we get a bit of flavour. If we can, those nice joints with a bit of marrow in it. What I used to do in the industry basically is we'd have our bones come in, it might be 40 or 100 kilo. We used to straight away roast them off. We wouldn't let them sit in the fridge because they sit in the fridge, they sit in blood, they tend to go sour or off very quickly. So what we're going to do today, we'll just turn to the page. Beef stock's the first one we're going to be doing. We really just want to roast our bones. We want to get a good colour on them. So the challenge, I guess, for you guys, it's easy for me here. I've got my nice big stove and you guys all know our kitchens. We've got our little tray here, but we're going to roast our bones. So if you don't have a tray like this, you're going to have to kind of freestyle a little bit with some of your stuff. You're going to have to figure out, how am I going to roast this? Could be that you use a flat pan, a fry pan. It could be that you have to use another kind of a tray. Just be aware of those aluminium trays. If they're in there for a long time, they might burn and melt, so just be careful of that. Bones are going to go into the oven. Turn the oven on. Probably 180 is a good temperature for that. We'll look through at our mirepoix next. So we all know what a mirepoix, beautifully cut. I've had lots of help from Cormac and Claire over the last few days. We've got onions, celery, carrot, we've got some bay leaf, a little bit of leek. Chef Brad, as you know, is not a leek fan for using his stocks because they're very expensive. So the other things I want to talk to you about today, a little bit we'll touch on it, is perhaps cost and being sustainable as well. So all those trimmings that we've got here, we would have used those for our mise en place that will be coming up for our veg stock. So very important. We've just got standard tomato paste and I've got a little bit of water as well. So what will happen now is in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes when my bones are ready, I will take them out and I'll go on to the next process. Okay, I'm back and here we go. We're looking for our brown bones. So they've got good colour on them. You can see there's a little bit of oil. So the thing with stocks is it's like the stock's enemy is oil. We're trying at all times to limit the amount of stock or the contamination of oil into the stock. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. All we've got to do now, it's very easy, is we've got our nice mirepoix. That goes in. I don't want a lot of it to go on the tray because it'll burn. So I'm just piling it up there and in goes our tomato paste as well. Let me tell you, this is a very classical way of doing this. There's a lot of kitchens in Perth that they would basically get a tray with a full tray of bones, would go into a hot oven, they'd roast off their mirepoix separately. They'd also potentially add all of that into a big pot then, and they'd even dollop their tomato paste into the pot. And you're talking, 60 to 100 litre pots or big kettles. So that's our next phase, and when I come back, we're going to look at the glazing and getting rid of that fat. Okay, so now I've got my mirepoix with my bones and a little bit of tomato paste in there, and I have freestyled a little bit already. It's early days, but I've done a little bit of freestyling with the comparison of what we've got there and a recipe. So we'll make subtle changes, and we'll talk about those changes when we do our online discussions about the lessons. But in here I've got my bones, nice now with my mirror plug, nice and coloured, it's not burnt, which means it's not going to get bitter. What we're trying to do here is we want to really make sure that we don't let that oil mix with the water that we've got here. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to take our bones out, letting that oil drain very well. And I'm just going to scoop out the majority of this veg. So there's the good thing about stocks, I guess moving forward and being quite modern now, is this is a beef stock. So something that you would look at doing now is using a beef stock for me as a base, and you might, from a beef stock, make a master stock. So the master stock could be used to poach or braise like shin, like Asian style. So you might make a master stock with lots of aromats in there, some oyster sauce, some palm sugar, and different Asian flavours. So then you've got more of a master Asian stock. If we look here, I've got my veg in, pretty happy. Got all that oil. So that oil is actually going to go to waste. We don't want that in there. And as you guys know, we need to deglace. So deglace means we're adding our, could be wine, it could be water. Today we're adding water, it could be other stock depending on what we're doing. And that's just going to go in there. Now the recipe says to do this 3 times, but for the volume that we're doing, we'll just do it once. We're just going to lift off that caramelisation. We'll get most of it. I got rid of probably 95% of that oil. And I saw that these bones that we've got here do contain a fair bit of fat. So in actual fact, we are going to have a stock later on with a fair bit of fat on it. And all we'll do is lift or skim that fat off later. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. You see the colour now. We've got a little bit more flavour in there. Again, in commercial kitchens, you wouldn't always do this in big commercial kitchens. You just have your trays, your veg, and you plop it into your big pot. So that goes there. All we'll do now is put that back on the stove, top it up with some cold water. If I wanted to make this for a base heavy on herbs or tomato paste, I'm going to add even more at this stage. So all we have to do now is be ready. So when it comes back to your setting up for your sessions, you really should go about having your tray ready or having your section set up like you do when you're in the kitchens here, guys. Salt, pepper ready, spoons, tasting spoons. Go through and make sure you plan it. Have a bit of a workflow. It'll actually make you look pretty good as well when people come in and see you cooking and you've got this amazing setup in your home kitchen. So I've got tongs, I've got scissors, I've got spoons, salt, peppers, lighters. And for me, I only really have out the knives that I want to use for that lesson. I don't have 6 or 8 knives out that I'm not going to use. I've got my cloths here as well, so we know we're not going to burn ourselves. And probably one of the most important things when we're doing stocks is later on when this comes to the boil, we're going to skim that scum and that fat off there. And later on we're going to need some kind of either a chinois, this is a fine style one, or a normal kind of holy one there. If you don't have those at home, you can potentially just use a sieve as well. All right, so that's some of the equipment that we'll be needing.
Maybe even a colander, Chef Brad.
Yeah, colander, like a deeper colander that we drain past your rice in would suffice as well. As long as we're getting the liquid out of the bone in the veg, basically. Okay, so I've got my beef stock here. It's in our pot. We're just waiting for that to come up now. I've got some herbs, so you can use whatever herbs you want, basically, as I explained earlier. So I've just got some thyme. So that'll go in there. We think about a bouquet garni and things like that. Again, different kitchens out in the industry will have different methods. So the key is really just talk to your chefs out of the industry. Make sure that you understand. Remember, there's never a silly question. Talk to the chef. If they give you a direction, I need you to go and do A, B, and C. If you don't understand what B is, don't just go off, because the chef at that stage actually thinks that you know what you're doing. So remember, for me, I'll give you as much kind of those life skills as we can, or survival tips of life out in the real kitchens. Safe kitchen here, we've got our stock on. We're going to move over here now, and we're going to move on to the next dish, which is demi glace. So demi glace is used widely around kitchens. Again, there's some slightly different methods. This is your classic method here. We're basically going to combine an Espanol sauce, and we'll talk about Espanol and mother sauces when we do our online chats and our online lessons. We're going to flavour this with some, we've got our beef stock, in goes our Espanol. The key with this again is flavour and getting some flavour into this sauce and then cooking it out. So this isn't a set and forget. This is like all of these stocks, you can't just put it on and come back because the recipe says 4 hours later. We need to be here controlling that heat, managing those stocks, making sure that, hey, it needs to be, we need to get rid of that scum on the top, or it's come to the boil, we don't need it to boil. Actually, we don't want it to boil most of these stocks. If we boil them, that fat and all that rubbish that you see floating on top will actually boil back into that beautiful clear stock, and that's actually going to have an effect on whatever we use that sauce or stock for later on. So here we've got Espanol, brown stock, we've got some mushrooms, button, we've got some trimmings in there as well. We've got, again, bay, thyme, tomato, in it goes. You could whack some peppercorns. I normally would use like a nice white peppercorn, and then that is now going to come on here. Okay, so that again comes on our stove. Chef Brad's always talking about cluster cooking, so we are cluster cooking now. We've got our beef stock here, we've got our demi glace here. We're going to move on to the next dish, our julie. Okay, so over here, if we can, Cormac's just going to have a look here for me. We've got our stock just ticking away. So what, I'm just going to turn this up. I just want to show you what we don't want to be doing. So you never want to have a stock doing this. You can see it heating up, heating up, heating up. It's actually boiling rapidly now. We actually don't want to do that. So all this white that you can see through here, I don't know if you can see that, Cormac, on there.
That's good.
You can see here, there's all this foam that comes to the top with the oil. So if we boil it like this, all that's going to get put back through, and that's going to make our stock cloudy or bitter, maybe even a little bit gritty. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, at this stage, just scoop out, without taking too much of that liquor or that veg, any impurities that I can see. So I can see a bit of fat over there. So that fat is gone. Now the reason we need to do this here again is so it doesn't fall back through, but also later on, that sauce at the end, when it cools down, we don't want to lose a lot of that lovely flavoured stock at the end by having to skim off all the fat. It's a shame I don't have, well, we'll discuss the methods of taking the fat off later, perhaps when we've skimmed it. So that's that one. So the beef stock's moving along nicely. I'm going to jump now into the julie. Okay, so a very similar method. I've actually got my mirepoix ready. I'm going to fry off our mushrooms. I'm going to put in my mirepoix. So the recipe, basically it's the same method. Roast the bones, get the mirepoix in with the bones. We're going to add our aromats, and we're going to add some tomato as well into this. So in go the aromats, got some bay leaf, we've got some peppercorns, in goes the tomato paste. I'm just going to cook that for a little bit. We're going to get a little bit of colour on that. Then we're going to actually add beef stock. And again, what we're looking for here is we don't want to have it too hot. Control that temperature, control that heat. Now the good thing about having this here is while I'm looking after the julie, I can already see that my beef stock needs some attention. So even after a minute of chatting, I need to skim this again. So this is one of the tasks that you'll probably get given in a kitchen when you're just starting out, is to get the stocks on and to make sure that they're not boiling rapidly, and to also make sure that you're skimming them. Chefs will come along, they'll certainly let you know if they feel that you're not doing your job properly. The other thing we're looking for here is we don't want that evaporation of that stock to have too much of an impact, and we're losing our yield out of that. So if we need to top that up with water, that's what we do. Our other sauce is on here, our stock, and that's coming on nicely, our demi there. Right, so this one's nearly where it needs to be. Just sweated that down nicely with the mushrooms, tomato, aromats are in there. What have we got to do next? We've got to whack our bones in. I've got my bones already browned off. In they go. They're nice meaty bones again, so that means we're going to get good flavour in that stock base. Again, I'm just going to give that a mix, make sure I'm happy with how it's all sitting in there. And then I've got some beef stock. We need to add beef stock to this. So this is for our julie. So it's a bit of a process. Some kitchens would do a similar method to this. They have all that mirepoix, all the bones and all the aromats in a massive big pot. You have it on a stove like this, you have a big tap over there, and you'd fill it up. And that might sit there for a good, it depends on the kitchen. Sometimes they might do it for 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, depends on the kitchen and whatever they're going to be using it for. So what we've got to do now is let this come up like the other stocks, and we've got to start managing and skimming them and making sure we're happy with that flavour base. Okay, so we have now our julie on, we've got our stock on, we've got our demi on. So as I've discussed, we've just got to manage those and keep in control. Now, we need to discuss something. The elephant in the room. It's these two here, okay? So as a chef, we need to understand a lot of things about being a chef. There's a lot of different venues out there. There's your high-end dining, there's your bulk cooking, there's mine sites, there's hospitals, there's your corner cafe. Now, if I owned a corner cafe, I don't think it would be probably realistic for me to be ordering bones in and making big pots of stock if I had 1 or 2 items where I needed a little bit of gravy on some chips. So when we talk about convenience stocks, for me, I've been in the industry a long time. Paul, mate, you've been in the industry a long time. There is a place for something like this. Now, I used products like this over in when I was doing some work at Rottnest, and it wasn't viable for us to bring over 400 kilo of bones a week to make stocks and chews because there's transport costs. Actually, there was temperature issues with putting product on the barge, getting it over to Roro. So we had to look at using these kind of products. So there is a place for it. It's about being smart. It's about being realistic. Ultimately, as the chef, we need to realise as well, we need to make money. Okay. So one of the things we have to do as a chef is, yes, produce beautiful food, produce food that our customers come in to eat, but we also need to make money. Otherwise, the business isn't going to be viable. We look here again. We can forget about these now. We've addressed that. But I think there's a really good place for these out in the industry somewhere. When it comes to us now looking at our stocks and managing these, so I can see here, we've come up to the boil since I put this on a bit earlier. We're getting rid of that foam and all that scum on the top. Actually smells really good. We've got that cluster cooking going on, guys, which is what I always talk about. And that when you plan your workflow for your assessments, you need to take that on board when it comes to actually producing food for the set times that you have to do. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about quickly before we have a little bit of a break is I want to talk about the 2 things that chefs talk to me about constantly. The interaction I have with the industry. So there's 2 things chefs want. They want you guys to know how to set up. They want you to walk in the kitchen. They want you to hit the ground running. They want you to know what you're doing, and that's to get you set up. You know what your setup is. For example, today it's having all of our mise en place ready, knowing where all of our ingredients are in the kitchen. The second most important thing they want you to do, so number 1, set up. Number 2, they want you to know how to clean down. Everyone's done a long day. They don't want to be there any longer than they need to be. So the feedback I get, and some little bit of life support skills for you guys out there, is know how to set up, know how to clean down. If you can do that, and you can hustle, and you can follow instructions, you can take notes, chefs out in the industry are going to love you for that. So please embrace it, take it on board. We're going to talk soon again. I'm going to strain and finish our stocks at the required times. Okay, so we have our beef stock completed. So what I want to do now, it's got good flavour. I've had a taste. It smells really yummy. I'm just doing a final skim. Just that way when the chef comes along, they've asked you how many times have you skimmed it. You said, I've skimmed it 50 times, chef. Chef's really happy with it. They'll be coming past constantly having a look. Next phase is for you guys at home, as well as us in the industry when we're out there, is we need to actually strain that or pass it off. So we need to use a muslin cloth, which is like a, I've got some here. We've got, most of you would have seen this when you're using methods of cookery. We can use it for a lot of things. It's just like a fine cloth, and that's going to take out a lot of that impurities and anything left in there that we don't want. So we'll end up with a lovely, clear beef stock at the end of this. So Cormac's going to help me out a bit here, but we might not need to actually. I can just ladle that straight through. I'll actually just show you what we've got. We've just got it like a normal home style sieve here. That way, easy for you guys, over a bowl or over another pot. And that's going to go in here, okay? So we'll just ladle that in slowly until I get to the end. Now, what are we going to do with our bones? At the end of this, I guess we can throw them out. Obviously, yes, I wouldn't do anything with it. The veg, you might be able to crush it up and put it through something else. But again, the best way, just probably get rid of it. Okay, so that's going to go through there. Just take that in a little bit so it doesn't fall out. We now just let that strain through. We've got our lovely beef stock. So if we have a look here, I don't know if you can see, Cormac, there's a little bit of fat, and to be honest, it's pretty good. So I might show you one little trick at this stage. So when we have skimmed it and skimmed it and skimmed it, what we actually can do is we can put that into the fridge, and the next day we would come back, and that would have that little layer of fat. And sometimes you'll see it in our stock buckets here. We get that little crust over it. We can just break that off. Often when you make a beef stock, you need to use it straight away. So you can just, this is like just the secret tip from the chefs. You just lay a paper towel on there, and that paper towel is just gathering. It's not taking a lot of that stock out of there. It's actually just gathering all of the fat. I don't know if you can see it, but there's quite a lot of fat on there. So you can see that colour. So what we would actually do in this rig, we really do this, and I can see I've taken about 50% of that fat off there. So we'll do it again. You might need to do this 3 or 4 times depending upon how efficient you've been with your skimming, and also that fat, or the amount of fat that's come out of those bones as that's spent its time cooking. So that's now looking pretty good to me. There's still a little bit there. I'll probably let that settle. I put it in the fridge, and I might just finish it off when it comes to the next day, or I'll spend a little bit more time on it if we're going to use it for our Julie, Espanol, or even our demi. Okay, so that's first dish done, beef stock. Okay, welcome back. We're coming on nicely. I've actually done a few things. We're at the final stage now for our jus, or for our Julie, and we've just got in here. It's just reduced down a little bit. I'm at the stage where now we can thicken it. So I've got arrowroot here. So in the industry, we might add a really good quality red wine and reduce that. Some people then add sugar, they add cranberry jelly, they add all kinds of stuff into their jus. We're just going to use an arrowroot today. That's so it helps us with our gluten-free intolerances, which are, as chefs, again, we need to take that on board. We just add that in slowly into our jus.
So, Chef Brad, in our recipe books, we've got jus and we've got now Julie.
Yes.
So, what are the difference?
Well, lié means to thicken, I think.
So, lié, correct. Lié, it's a French word. So, Julie means thickened jus. And generally, we would use a Julie in a roast meat that might contain some stuffing, like a stuffed chicken or something, so that the stuffing won't absorb the jus. So that's why we would generally thicken it. So it's the same product, and the lié means to thicken.
Beautiful. So really good information. There's so much history in our food. So this time we maybe got a bit of downtime when we talk about our recipe books, knowing what we're cooking, maybe just spend a little bit of time doing some research on what you're cooking. Because at the end of the day, guys, when you've cooked these dishes for your different units, you're going to have some product left over. there's no point making beef stock or a demi or a jus. So we can use this jus. Why not put a steak on the barbecue? We could turn this into a peppercorn sauce. We could turn it into just a lovely herb jus, and then we just nappe that over our steak or our chicken breast. So what we're looking for here is just a little bit thicker, so it's going to coat and hold. I've got to get all of that in. So we've made a little bit of a slurry out of that arrowroot. We'll just cook this out for a minute or two, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you those 3 sauces that we've made in session 1. Okay, so I've followed the recipes. I've got my 3 finished products for session 1. Over here we've got a beef stock. So it's come up pretty well. I'm happy with that. Nice and light, good colour. We make a nice sauce from that. We've got our demi, which is obviously a little bit thicker. That as well, nice and rich. So we'd use this in the stock soups and sauces. I think for your assessment you have a chasseur sauce, but we could do chasseur, we could do a peppercorn sauce, a red wine sauce. There's a lot of different derivative sauces we can make from a demi. And then we've got our julie. And then that, depending upon what you're going to use it for, will just be spoon or nappe over a protein generally. And there you have it. There's our 3 session 1 products completed. Enjoy it.